The psychology behind why some people shut everyone out. You haven't texted anyone in weeks. Your phone is quieter now. The group chats are still there. The names are still there. But something in you stopped reaching. And the strangest part is this: you don't just feel sad. You feel lighter. That is the part most people do not understand. They look at someone who shuts everyone out and assume coldness, bitterness, arrogance, selfishness. But very often that is not what is happening at all. Very often what looks like distance on the outside is actually emotional survival on the inside. Because people usually do not shut everyone out all at once. They shut people out after years of being the one who stayed, the one who understood, the one who gave the benefit of the doubt, the one who kept explaining, forgiving, adjusting, carrying, hoping. And at some point, the nervous system reaches a conclusion the mind has been trying not to face. This is costing me too much. That is where the real story begins. And research backs up something important here. Family estrangement and chronic disconnection are not usually one dramatic decision. They are more often the end of a long process of rupture repair attempts, repeated disappointment, and emotional exhaustion. Carl Pillamer's work on estrangement has consistently shown that people usually do not walk away because of one isolated incident, but after a long period in which staying no longer feels psychologically bearable. That matters, because it means many people who shut everyone out are not impulsive. They are depleted, and depletion changes the way a person relates to closeness. At first, they may not even realize what is happening. They just know that certain people make their chest tighten. Certain conversations feel heavy before they even begin. Certain names on a screen bring dread instead of warmth. That is not random. It is often the body recognizing a pattern before the conscious mind is willing to name it. And those patterns usually start much earlier than adulthood. A lot of people who shut everyone out did not learn distance in their 20s or 30s. They learned it in childhood. They learned it in homes where emotional needs were minimized, where love was inconsistent, where closeness came with criticism, unpredictability, guilt, or shame. A 2024 scoping review on childhood neglect found that neglect is strongly associated with difficulties in emotion regulation later in adulthood, and attachment research has repeatedly shown that insecure attachment changes how people respond to distress. In relationships, some become hyper-alert to rejection, while others suppress need, pull back, and protect themselves through emotional distance. So when a person shuts everyone out, what you may be seeing is not a personality flaw. You may be seeing a nervous system that learned very early. Need is dangerous. Dependence is costly. If I let people matter too much, they can hurt me. That is why some people look independent but feel exhausted. Strong but unreachable. Calm but emotionally locked. Their self-reliance was not always a free choice. Sometimes it was an adaptation. Sometimes it was the only way they knew how to survive disappointment without collapsing under it. And then adulthood repeats the lesson. They become the reliable one, the helper, the listener, the friend who always checks in. The person who remembers birthdays, answers late-night messages, carries other people's pain, and keeps the emotional temperature of every relationship stable. But when they need something back, the room changes, the responses get shorter, people get awkward, support becomes vague, and slowly, painfully, a realization forms. A lot of these relationships only worked because I was over-functioning inside them. That realization is devastating because it forces a person to confront something most people do not want to admit. Some relationships are not mutual. They are transactional. They survive on your labor, your emotional availability, your usefulness, your willingness to keep giving more than you receive. And the moment you stop performing that role, people do not ask what happened to you. They ask what happened to the version of you that served them. That is why shutting everyone out can feel paradoxically like coming back to yourself, because sometimes you are not just removing people. You are removing the version of yourself that believed love had to be earned through usefulness. That is one of the deepest psychological shifts in this whole pattern. The shift from, I must be needed to be valued, to, my value does not depend on how much of myself I abandon. That shift is painful, but it is also freeing. And this is where I need to make an important distinction, because not every form of shutting everyone out is healthy. Some distance is boundary, some distance is armor, and if you do not know the difference, you can mistake emotional shutdown for healing. That matters because the science here is clear too. Loneliness and social isolation are not harmless. The U.S. Surgeon General's advisory reported that poor social relationships are associated with a 29% higher risk of heart disease and a 32% higher risk of stroke, and loneliness is linked with depression, anxiety, dementia, and premature death. The National Institute on Aging makes the same point. Prolonged loneliness and social isolation can threaten both physical and mental health. So the goal is not to glorify isolation. The goal is to understand why it happens, and then build something healthier than either chaos or complete shutdown. Because for many people, the first feeling after cutting everyone off is not joy. It is relief, not because isolation is ideal, but because the body is finally getting a break from constant anticipation. No more explaining, no more walking on eggshells, no more overthinking the tone of every message, no more managing other people's moods. For the first time in a long time, silence feels safer than closeness. And if someone has spent years in emotionally draining dynamics, that relief can be so powerful that they start protecting it at all costs. This is the dangerous middle stage, the stage where peace becomes precious, but also where a person may become so protective of that peace that they stop letting anyone close enough to be real. That is why the real task is not let everyone back in. The real task is discernment. Learning the difference between safe solitude and defensive isolation, real boundaries and emotional walls, mutual connection and familiar pain. So what does that look like in practice? It starts with honesty, not about other people, about your own pattern. Ask yourself, do I pull away because I finally see something clearly, or because closeness itself now feels threatening, even with people who have done nothing wrong? Do I feel calmer after distance, or just emptier? Am I protecting my peace, or protecting an old wound from ever being touched again? Those questions matter, because healing is not just about leaving what hurts you. It is also about rebuilding your ability to recognize what is safe, and that rebuilding has to be practical. Here are 3 things that genuinely help. First, track the pattern instead of romanticizing the withdrawal. For 1 week, notice when you want to disappear. Who triggered it? What exactly happened? What story did your mind immediately tell? Did you feel dismissed, used, controlled, misread? Replace vague suffering with specific data. That is how insight begins. Second, stop confusing overgiving with intimacy. If you are always the one initiating, rescuing, reassuring, checking in, adjusting, and carrying pause, real connection is not proved by how much you can endure. It is revealed by whether the other person can meet you halfway without being dragged there. Third, rebuild connection selectively, not indiscriminately. Not everyone deserves access just because they want it. Look for people who are emotionally consistent, people who do not punish honesty, people who do not get offended when you set a boundary, people who can stay present when you are not performing. That is how chosen family begins, not with intensity, with safety, with steadiness, with mutuality. And that point matters more than ever, because the healthiest answer to this pattern is not trust everyone again. It is learn to trust wisely, not all at once, not with everyone, but enough to remember that healthy connection does exist, because some people shut everyone out, not because they hate intimacy, but because they have only known distorted versions of it, versions built on guilt, obligation, emotional labor, hypervigilance, or one-sided effort. And when that is what connection has meant for years, shutting everyone out can feel like the first intelligent thing the psyche has done in a long time. So if this is you, hear this carefully. You are not weak for reaching your limit. You are not cruel for becoming tired. You are not broken because your body learned to protect you. But protection is not the final destination. It is the bridge between surviving what hurt you and learning how to build a life that no longer requires constant self-erasure. That means the goal is not to become someone who needs no one. The goal is to become someone who no longer confuses pain with love, someone who no longer calls anxiety chemistry, someone who no longer calls overgiving depth, someone who can say, I still want connection. I just do not want the kind that costs me myself. Because that is the real psychology behind why some people shut everyone out. Not hatred, not ego, not indifference, exhaustion, pattern recognition, old wounds, a nervous system that got tired of being asked to bleed politely. And for many people, healing begins the moment they stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking a better question. What did I have to live through for this to make sense? That question changes everything. Because once shame leaves, clarity enters. And once clarity enters, change becomes possible. Not dramatic change, not overnight change, real change. The kind that starts quietly. The kind that sounds like this. I do not have to open to everyone. I do not have to explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I do not have to keep shrinking just because other people were comfortable with a smaller version of me. And I do not have to shut out the whole world forever just because some people taught me that closeness was dangerous. That is the deeper truth. Sometimes shutting everyone out is not the end of your story. It is the moment you stop abandoning yourself. And from there, finally you can begin again.